I hope all is well. I am Thomas, and I want to tell you about a case, a true crime case that happened 33 years ago at this point that is still unsolved. It's a tragic case of Timothy Wiltsey. Hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. May 25th of 1991. Timothy's mom tells police her 5-year-old son Timothy is missing. Now this story takes place in New Jersey. She says that her son disappeared around 7:30 p.m. when she turned her back to buy a soda at a carnival in John F. Kennedy Memorial Park in Sayreville, New Jersey, which is where we are going to right now. The carnival is suspended at that point as police, firefighters, first aid squads, and volunteers, they search the area for the boy until 2 a.m. The next day, the search resumes at 5:30 a.m. with more than 300 people searching the park and surrounding neighborhoods. State police fly over the 10-acre park, and a helicopter and a diving unit searches 2 ponds. That is the flyer for Timothy. In reports, there was a quote that we did a search of the whole park. We are satisfied that he is not at the park, and there is nothing further that we could get there at this time. The Sayreville police sergeant says in a report. The search is called off 12 noon. On May 27th, volunteers would hand out 4,000 flyers about the missing boy as police checked out more than 30 phone calls about small boys seen walking alone or accompanied by men. But none of the tips led to Timothy. Police eliminate the boy's father, whom he had not seen since he was a baby, as a suspect after they determined that he was at home in Iowa at the time of the disappearance. America's Most Wanted would air a segment about Timothy's disappearance as flyers would go out nationwide. Timothy's mother tells the press that she will not give up hope that her son will be found. She moves out of her house to avoid the press. There is another picture of Timothy. Everyone is waiting to see a grieving mother on TV break down, crying and being hysterical, because the public, they thrive on that stuff. But I'm not going to do it, the mother Michelle says. On June 7th of 91, the mom changes the story. A fact that is not publicly revealed until nearly a year later. She tells police that a woman she knew by the name of Ellen was at the carnival with a little girl and 2 men. She said she recognized the woman from a bank where she was once a teller, where Timothy's mom was once a teller, and believed that she worked as a go-go dancer. She said Ellen agreed to watch Timothy while she went to the concession stand for a soda, and that she had left her son with her. But after getting the soda, Ellen, Timothy, and the little girl and the 2 men they were all gone. She said she didn't say Ellen earlier in a story to police because she didn't want to get in trouble for leaving Timothy with somebody she didn't know that well. During this time, the same day, the authorities, they're going through, looking in ponds in South Amboy, New Jersey now for Timothy's body, and they didn't find anything. Timothy's picture and description is eventually put on half-gallon containers the following week to kind of try to find Timothy. Timothy's mom is asked to give a statement to New Jersey police. She is later interviewed by detectives from Sayreville, which is where the carnival was. There's a picture of Michelle and Timothy. So she's asked to give a statement, along with a statement to the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office. And this time she changes the story yet again. So it seems like she has 3 different stories now. She tells police that one of the men with Ellen came up behind her at her car, held her at knife point, and made threatening comments about Timothy's safety before leaving with Timothy. Now, Timothy's mom said that the man indicated she might get her son back in a month, and she might get a call from him. Now, Timothy's mom, Michelle, she said that she was afraid to tell the truth because she didn't want Timothy to get hurt. After hours of grilling by investigators, Timothy's mom goes to a local hospital to be treated for hyperventilating. Here we are in Kennedy Park right now in Sayreville. This is a big park. You could see the pond straight ahead. I'm not exactly sure if this, carnival was held on the whole, on the whole grounds, just part of the grounds. Where exactly, that I couldn't determine, but you could see one of the ponds that were, looked at as we are in Kennedy Memorial Park in Sayreville. So all this so far has been happening in May and June. We fast forward a couple of months in October of 1991, where a passerby finds a muddy sneaker behind the Raritan Center office complex in Edison, New Jersey, a few towns over. And police later reveal that shoe might belong to Timothy. Here's the picture of that shoe. It's a size 13 sneaker decorated with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle prints, and it matched the description of the shoes that Timothy's mom said her son was wearing when he had disappeared. So all indications are, at that point, that this is the shoe. A month after the shoe is discovered, this is at November now, for following the timeline of 1991. Michelle, Timothy's mom, she faces a room full of reporters and television cameras, and to ask for prayers for her son and answer criticism that she has showed little public emotion since his disappearance. She says, during that meeting with the press, look, I don't show emotion in public, and I don't think I should have to because someone wants me to. A few months later now, after her meeting with the press, it's now April 23rd of 1992. It's a sad day. Police reveal that they have tentatively identified Timothy's remains after police find a skull in the creek where the teenage Ninja Turtle sneaker was first found in October. Timothy's mom is brought to Sayreville Police Headquarters, and she is notified that Timothy has passed away before investigators question her again on his disappearance. They were able to identify that this was Timothy through the boy's dental records. May of 1992 now, Timothy family, they hold a funeral mass for him after the state and the county medical examiners, they release his remains nearly a month after his skull was found. Police say that the remains do not show how the boy died, nor do they give any clues about his killer. Police sources acknowledge now for the first time publicly that Timothy's mom account of her son's disappearance had changed several times in the days and months after she reported him missing. And they say that Ellen, who Timothy's mom mentions, has never been found. January of 1994 now. We fast forward 2 years. This case is still unsolved. Who's Timothy's killer? 2 years later, in January of 1994, Michelle, Timothy's mom, is reporting missing after her car is found outside her brother's apartment with one door open and the engine running. The next day, and this is a current picture or most recent picture of Timothy's mom, that's Michelle. Michelle was found unharmed in downtown Detroit the next day. She tells investigators she was abducted by two men claiming to be FBI agents, though the FBI officials say they are skeptical of her story. Police, well, they later reveal that they believe that Michelle knew that she was about to be served with a subpoena in a case involving her longtime friend, which was a police officer. He is accused of improperly using a police computer to run license plate numbers of cars that Michelle said were following her. So authorities announced that a Union County grand jury decided to take no action against Michelle's friend for running computer traces of license plates for Michelle. Now fast forward to next year, March of 1995, Michelle is sentenced to 3 years probation and given a form of modified house arrest for faking her kidnapping. She admits that she had taken a bus to Detroit and made up a tale of being abducted by FBI agents. We fast forward. Now Michelle, has had some run-ins with the law. 98. You had one in 95, which was with the license plate. You had 98, 2 cases. But now we're going all the way forward to 2011. And at this point, the case of Timothy is still unsolved. But the Middlesex County prosecutor said Crime Stoppers of Middlesex County, they offered a new reward. It's an undisclosed amount for information leading to the arrest in the 20-year-old case of Timothy. This is back in 2011. The county prosecutor said, quote, "We are always hopeful that one day charges will be filed and that justice will be served." So they're still working the case. 3 years later, it's now 2014. The police, they announced that Timothy's mom, who is 46 now and living in Florida, is arrested and charged with Timothy's murder. This is the house that Timothy and his mom lived in when they were in New Jersey. Now, Michelle is now, living in Florida. She's living with her two youngest sons. She was indicted by a Middlesex County grand jury the previous week. She is held in Florida jail on a $2 million bail. Some pictures from court in the case against Michelle, as you could see. September of 2015, the Supreme Court judge in New Brunswick says that the state had provided enough evidence to warrant a proceeding to trial. He writes that he was reluctant to dismiss any indictment except in the most egregious circumstances, and that this was not the case here. March of 2016, the trial against Michelle for the alleged death of her son begins. In opening statements, the prosecution says, quote, "The evidence will show that it was his mother, Michelle, the very person who brought him into the world, that took him out of it." Michelle's attorney counters, says the evidence will show that Michelle loved that little boy more than life itself. Michelle's niece, who used to babysit for her, she identifies a blanket that was found near the remains of her cousin as one she recognized from visits to his home. You've seen that picture here in this video. She said, "I used that blanket when I snuggled up with Timothy." She was very emotional as she was telling the court the story. Now, during this trial, one of Michelle's defense witnesses is a forensic expert who tells jurors the investigation of the site where his body was found, mishandled by investigators. May of 2016, 2 months after the trial had started, it goes to jury. And 6 days later, May of 2016, they find Michelle guilty of murder. 2 months go by, and Michelle's attorney, he appeals the verdict. He claimed that there was insufficient evidence which left the jury free to engage in, quote, pure speculation, and arguing a mistrial should have been declared when it was discovered that the foreman was doing his own online research, and that juror was dismissed. They go to court. They ask for a new trial or to have that guilty verdict thrown out. They argue insufficient evidence. Again. And a few months later there in October, about 2 months later, the judge denies the request for a new trial, rejecting the claim from Michelle's lawyer that she did not receive a fair trial. But January 5th now in 2017, Michelle at that point is sentenced to 30 years in prison. That's the minimum sentence for a first-degree murder under sentencing guidelines. Her attorney says that they will file an appeal within a week. In August of 2019, it's taken 2 years to hear that appeal. But there is an appeal, and a panel of 3 judges, they deny the appeal, saying that there was available proof for the jury to conclude beyond a reasonable doubt that Timothy's death was neither suicide nor an accident, but rather he was the victim of a homicide. We are now fast forwarding to February of 2020. New Jersey Supreme Court, well, they agreed to hear Michelle's appeal. This time, they said that they will consider defense arguments that the trial judge made a mistake when he refused to declare a mistrial after a juror was excused during deliberations for conducting his own research. It also says it will look at whether there was sufficient evidence to support her conviction. 7 months later now, October of 2020, in a hearing held via remote video, the coronavirus was going on at that time, the New Jersey Supreme Court heard from Michelle's attorney and the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office. And they go back and forth over the evidence. They also debate whether the judge presiding over the trial had been wrong by not declaring a mistrial. In a split decision, the state Supreme Court, they uphold the conviction of Michelle. The 3-3 ruling with the judges, again, they found that there was sufficient evidence. So you realize that 3 judges, they found that there was evidence was sufficient. And 3 members found the evidence insufficient to sustain the murder conviction. So essentially, it was tied. So Michelle's attorneys, a few weeks later, they seek an appointment of a tiebreaker by the Supreme Court to serve as a 7th deciding vote on Michelle's claim that there had been insufficient evidence to convict her. And they argued that the split decision upholding her conviction was a violation of her due process rights. October of 2021, the Supreme Court agrees to take an unprecedented second look at the conviction of Michelle, with the addition of the tiebreaker, as the court again hears the case. Lawyers for Michelle and the prosecutors who sent her to prison appear in front of the Supreme Court in what was said to be an unusual re-arguing of her long-running appeal in the high-profile homicide case. December of 2021, this is where we stand now. The New Jersey Supreme Court, 4-3 ruling, overturns the conviction against Michelle, concluding that there was not enough evidence for a jury to find her guilty of murder. Till this day, this case is unsolved. Very sad case. Very sad case. Very young boy, never got to experience childhood and, growing to be a man, have a family of his own. Someone out there knows what happened. Please, if you do, call the proper authorities. It would mean a lot to Timothy and his family.